just saw the story on Tim Canova and Deborah Wasserman-Schultz. I thought the story was interesting because I was covering that race. So I feel a certain degree of obligation to continue to cover it, since this is furtherance of the race, even though you could say it's kind of the post-election for 2018. So Disobedient Media runs a story covering this. And ultimately, the story boils down to Tim Canova's legal team is putting in a complaint, and he is pushing for a revote. There are parts of this piece that I agree with, there are parts of this piece that I disagree with, and we could talk about both as we go through this particular story. So when real men can't sleep, real men do the news. This is one of those scenarios. I've been on, I stay on the East Coast schedule. Because that's when people are online, and if you're going to do a show and you're going to have people watch the show, you have to be where the people are. In this case, Jimmy Dore is on, so nobody's going to be on this channel for this show, so it doesn't really matter. But it's 12:43 here. Before my wife and I met, I would sleep on the couch. I would always sleep on the couch. Very rarely did I ever go into the bedroom. I would end up conking out on the couch. Unless there was somebody there with me. You know, if you're explicitly trying to bed a female, then that's, well, that could be anywhere in the house. But in this particular case, often it ends up in the bedroom. So, but under normal circumstances, I would probably be eating something, eventually nod off watching television, getting up with the alarm in order to go to work, to rinse and repeat and do the process over again. With my wife gone, she's going to be gone for like 2 weeks. The pattern has emerged again, and this time it's been worse. My sleeping habits have been horrible here. I've been doing Netflix and binge watching anime, which is odd in itself because I don't typically watch anime and then conking up. I guess that said, with her gone, my nighttime habits have been a little weird. That said, let's talk about the story. First, if you guys enjoy the content and you dig what I'm putting down and you find yourself coming here often, please consider supporting either through PayPal or Patreon. You can also do super chats. I've been remonetized. Or for that matter, send me articles, or just like, share the video. And if I do videos all the time, so hit the notification key. So Tim Canova files for a revote. Let's look at the article and let's go through it. Tim Canova contests results. Deborah Wasserman-Schultz calls for a revote. Oh, there's another reason I wanted to cover this story. Tim Canova, he is the epitome of what I think people should do when they're running in races, and they think the people are being unfair to them in that race. Meaning, if you're running in the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party shafts you, cheats you, or if you earnestly believe that something took place in that race in an untoward way, then yeah, you shouldn't just turn around and co-sign the party that cheated you. If you need to, run as a third. Try to pull people to your side of the debate, to your side of the conversation, or at the very least, get the person to try to appropriate your ideas. But supporting the person that you believe shafted you and cheated you is nonsense. This goes to this idea of the politically abused spouse of the Democratic Party. How you would have all of these lefties in races where, you know, in one case somebody told them get out the race, anywhere you told the guy to get out the race, and then back the people who are taking behavior in this way. I think that is nonsense. In this case, I think Tim Canova did what Tim Canova should have done. When he believed that they destroyed the ballots, when he believed that something was wrong with that election process, when he couldn't get anybody in the party to assist him on this, he decided to run against both parties. I can't agree with him more. That makes me more inclined to cover this particular story. I like the cut of his jib, as they say. Right here, Disobedient Media. Earlier today, this was on December 1st. Earlier today, former Congressman candidate Tim Canova announced that his legal team filed a complaint officially contesting the results of last month's congressional race, in which Canova faced off DNC chairwoman Deborah Wasserman-Schultz. The campaign website announces the move. Tim Canova, independent candidate in Florida 23rd Congressional District, has filed a motion for a court to invalidate the results of the 2018 general election and declare that a new election shall proceed with hand-marked paper ballots that are counted by hand in public and recorded immediately and publicly local precinct level. I agree with all that. Well, at the very least, I agree with that's how elections should be run. People should have faith in the integrity of the electoral system. I mean, that is an insane thing. The people who are running your country, who are spending the public coffers, are being elected by people. At the very least, we should know that the elections are honest. Full agreement in that point. There should be transparency in our elections where there's complete, absolute public trust. That is not what we have. And these suspicions aren't out of whole cloth. In details of Canova's court filings, Broward County Election Supervisor Brenda Snipes is alleged to have engaged in misconduct that was sufficient to change or place in doubt the results of the 2018 election. Canova cites Snipes, Dozel Spencer, the SOE Director of Voting Equipment, and other deputy supervisors, violated their oath to faithfully perform the duties, engaged in repeated misconduct and violations of state and federal laws, including criminal statutes. Highlights from the complaint. Number 1, Snipes failed to safeguard the chain of custody in the paper ballots cast in Broward County for the election, and the scope of the issue is sufficient to change or place in doubt the results of this election as now certified. Number 2, the certification of the purported 2018 election results is based on inadequate and incomplete information, and it therefore an invalid certification of those results. More specifically, approximately 98,000 votes are reported by Snipes that have been cast for Schultz without any indication as to how or when those votes were cast. To this date, Snipes still has not provided this information about the 98,000 votes from nowhere. How does that happen? How do you have 98,000 votes from nowhere? Number 3, the electronic voting machines used in this election are inherently defective as to the chain of custody for the electronic votes cast in this election. I agree with all this up to this point. The complaint states in part, he goes into further information on this. Now, this is disobedient media. The latest news comes under 24 hours after the Sun Sentinel reported that Florida Governor Rick Scott had fired Brenda Snipes effective immediately. The report states Florida Governor Rick Scott suspended Broward County election supervisor Brenda Snipes in Florida and installed a close ally to lead an office that could play a pivotal role in the next presidential election. Peter Antonassi, president and CEO of the state's business recruitment agency, Enterprise Florida, will serve as the remainder of Snipes' term until a replacement can be chosen by voters in November 2020, the governor's office announced. 2020 is going to be pivotal. That's pretty goddamn convenient. Disobedient media previously covered the disastrous aftermath of last month's midterm election, specifically concerning the race between Canova and Walsman Schultz. On election night, the official vote count awarded to Canova was a mere 5%, despite previous polling revealing the independent was tied with the former DNC chairwoman. The glaring discrepancy promoted voter calls and invalidation to the race, given Snipes' history of illegal ballot destruction, which benefited Walsman Schultz's interests, as well as the fact that Snipes was photographed campaigning with Deborah Walsman Schultz days before the voters went to the polls. It would be ludicrous if Tim Canova public failed to question the validity of the results. Now, here's the catch. This is the part where I disagree with. There's no link here. And there's no link here for a reason. On election night, the official vote count awarded mere 5%, despite a previous poll revealing the independent was tied. Now, this is where you would typically put a link. Right? I'm not crazy on that. Now, the reason I say that is because I think I know what she's referencing here. And it's somewhat of it's not necessarily a legitimate thing, I think. At least is my own perception of it. The poll that she's talking about was a Republican poll. And it was supposedly people who were part of the Republican Party or the guy who was running against the Democrat and Tim Canova. And supposedly he did an internal poll, and in this internal poll, he said Tim Canova and Deborah Wasserman-Schultz were tied. Now, he never revealed this poll. He just, the reporting just came out about it, but nobody had actually seen it. Nobody could contest the methodology. Nobody knew anything about it. It was just this kind of word of mouth thing. Unless I'm wrong, I could be completely talking on my ass. I don't think I am. This was the polling that I reported on. This reported that others lefties reported on. So seeing the 5% is a jarring experience when you go into this thinking that these guys may in fact be somewhere close together or maybe even tied. That's the part of this I disagree with. But let's keep going. I guess I'm making a point. I have no idea what Tim Canova was in relation to Deborah Wasserman-Schultz in the election. And if the only poll that I can go by is a Republican poll that nobody has seen, then I have to take it that the Republican may have just kind of leaked that information in order to create a certain degree of division. Because again, we've never saw the poll. It was something that was reported, not something that was actually seen. So saying that the 5% isn't right, there's no way to know whether the 5% is right or wrong. That's all I mean by that. So let's keep going. Regardless of the significance of two races against Deborah Wasserman-Schultz, as well as his campaign quest for transparency, should not be forgotten. That part is absolutely true. Trying to know and trying to, know, not just believe, but know that the person who got elected was a person who won that election is the thing that gives the office legitimacy. These questions that keep coming up, but it's not these questions are coming up out of nowhere. These questions are coming up because of shady dealings with these guys regarding these elections. She destroyed a bunch of ballots, broke the law, and nobody seemed to care about the fact that she broke the law. Now Rick Scott is up in arms because it's adversely affecting Rick Scott, and so he fires her. When Tim Canova was making a big stink out of this, though, nobody cared. I'll read this last part. It's for all these reasons, many believe that the discrepancy between the polling and election results was so extreme in Canova's latest race, it wasn't about safely beating Canova. But we don't know if it was extreme because we don't have the initial polling. I guess that's my only complaint with this article. The initial reports of the polling were nebulous at best. It's possible that I don't trust the Republican camp on this, or I'm not just automatically trusting the Republican camp with regards to the polling data. I have no idea what the election was before they did the election. The 5% bites and hurts, but I don't necessarily know whether it's true or false. I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't have anything to give me a marker prior to this particular point. I hope that makes sense. But it was about making an extreme example to such an extent that no one else would follow in his footsteps. With all this in mind, it's critical that the public support for Tim Canova's efforts in contesting last month's elections results. Donations can be made via Canova campaign website. So I agree with Tim Canova on the primacy of knowing that the person who you elected won that election. I agree with him on all of the fuck-ups that were associated with this election, and that those fuck-ups tend to cut in a particular direction. Those shouldn't happen. The idea that you have 98,000 mystery votes should not happen. That looks magnificently bad. And the chain of custody issues also raises very clear red flags that should be investigated. Whether this is going to allow for another revote, I'm skeptical of that, but I don't necessarily know that. But transparency, yes. These are problems in the Florida election, yes. And again, I like the gumption and the cut of his jib that he's willing to finally, somebody, make a legal issue out of things pertaining to elections. Regardless of what the vote tally turns out to be with Tim Canova, they may run the race and it might have been 5%. Interrogating the vote is important. It's important. We should know who we're electing, and we should have a certain degree of clarity with the fact that that person is being elected. So I'll end this here. I'm not going to keep this one long. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, write, subscribe. Share, like, subscribe. And you can always support through Patreon. Gardner, what happened in this election was blatant, clear violations of procedure. Yes. What's her ass still managing the process after getting cut previously? He didn't care. Rick Scott didn't care because it didn't affect Rick Scott. Rick Scott only cared when it affected Rick Scott. These were clear violations of the voting thing, and these are, yeah, they fired her now, but like you said, Guard, they should have fired her the first time around. So, all right, I'll leave this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. Thanks all.